Side characters. People's favorite characters in a specific show are usually the main characters, and I don't blame them. The main character is the one that drives the story and who we follow throughout the entire narrative. The protagonist is usually the one we look to when we want to view the world of the story we are following, or who we are usually meant to feel for in the overall emotional structure of that said story. But what if I told you that most of my favorite characters in the different shows that I watch are usually not the main characters but the side characters themselves? Whether it's their coolness factor or plot significance and impact, or their writing, there's just something most side characters in different stories have that make me title them as my favorite character in a specific show. There are a number of characters we could choose from, but let's narrow it down to 3 types of side characters to really showcase what makes certain side characters stand out in a story and sometimes even outshine the very well written and complicated main characters, because that's a hard task to accomplish. Not unless you're in the Demon Slayer universe, because Tanjiro is a dogshit protagonist. I said it. According to the sweet old Google search, a foil character is someone who contrasts with another character, usually the main character, to highlight the protagonist's personality and qualities. When we talk about a foil side character, it refers to characters who exist to really make the main character's qualities and views pop out so that the reader or watcher can really understand the character. I think a foil character that we can talk about is Reiner from Attack on Titan, who is a foil to the main character, which is Eren Yeager. Although you could also use Gabi as a foil to Eren, I think the better comparison here is definitely Reiner. Both Eren and Reiner are haunted by the events of the past. Both try their best to achieve victory for their own sides. They are both driven by the freedom for their people, and to an extent, both used by the corrupt people around them because of the sins of their ancestors. One, I think Reiner's character is amazing because he makes Eren's ideals pop so much more and makes us understand Eren a lot more, but also because we like learning about Reiner because the way he deals with the same experiences Eren went through is ultimately what makes him different. Therefore, you get an ultimately new character to chew on, and personally, I think Reiner is a better character than Eren. I know that may be controversial, but I think Reiner is very well written to that extent that he beats Eren's writing. Reiner's character exists to really let us see what would happen if Eren reacted differently to the events that happen in the narrative of the story. Eren wants to continue with his resolve to protect his people, while Reiner wants to kill himself because he's haunted by his actions. Or because he misses Historia in his life. I really couldn't tell you. I think another good example for the latter point is the foil character of Thorfinn, which is Canute. Although I think the comparison is a bit less obvious, they are still very similar. Both were impacted by the teachings of their fathers, especially when they were out of the picture, and then both also had different philosophies gained from different father figures who came into their life, being Askeladd and Ragnar. And then their philosophies change once those mentors are written out of the story. It adds a sense of philosophical struggle in the story, and makes the story way better when you have two characters who have had the same experiences really end up with different philosophies in the end. There are many bad examples of OP characters when it comes to different stories in media, but when the OP character route works, it really works. Overpowered characters can easily fall flat when it comes to us connecting to them on any emotional level whatsoever, but when an OP character is written with complexity and humanity, that's when the cliche of an overpowered character works for the overall narrative of a story. We could look at so many characters like Levi from Attack on Titan, which is a great example and a pinnacle of masterful character writing when it comes to an overpowered character, or even All Might from My Hero Academia, but I'll narrow it down to one character. A character more popular and relevant than ever, and probably the best character to talk about when it comes to an overpowered side character done right. And it's none other than Satoru Gojo. On the surface level, what makes Gojo really likable to many people is his design, personality, and coolness factor. But I'm really sad that so many people don't realize how complex Gojo's character really is. It's kind of the same field with Levi somewhat, that so many people know both of these characters, but most people don't really understand them. I think the main reason why I love Gojo so much is the sense of humanity in his character. The earliest we can see of Gojo in the JJK timeline is in the Hidden Inventory arc, where we can see that he has had some moments of almost going insane. He had a sense of detachment from the rest of the world because of how powerful he is. An example of this humanity is the fact that if it weren't for Geto's influence on Gojo, Gojo would have probably committed mass murder during Riko's death. It was like Gojo got his ego destroyed when he realized being the strongest wasn't enough to rescue Riko from her fate. It's the fact that Gojo, as the overpowered character of the story, has to live with the fact that when a character in the JJK cast or saga dies, Gojo would ultimately blame himself for not being there to protect that character when he is considered the strongest of the story. In general, the strongest is not a compliment but a curse. His line, "I alone am the honored one," can be referred to as "I alone am the cursed one." It's a curse that haunts him when a character dies and he isn't there to protect them, considering he titles himself as the strongest. There are so many much more layers with Gojo's character, especially shown in the Hidden Inventory arc. It's a showcase that just because you're the overpowered one in the universe does not mean you're living the easiest.
何かに酔っ払ってねえとやってられなかったんだな。みんな何かの奴隷だった。
Now we've come to my absolute favorite type of character when it comes to not only side characters but even the protagonists or the antagonists. To put it simply, a morally gray character allows you to really involve yourself when it comes to whether you like this character or not. I think when a morally gray character exists in a story, it allows you to have a bigger room for care. You don't care because the character is the goodest of the land or the most evil person there is, but you care because you can relate to the character and you want to see them grow as a person. And when they do decisions you don't necessarily agree with, it feels much more impactful to you as the viewer because you've come to care for this character. Many characters exist in all different forms of media, whether it's TV shows, games, movies. Characters like Magneto from the X-Men franchise, where he's portrayed as a villain but has moments of compassion, adding depth to his overall character. Usually when the phrase morally gray is brought up, a character that a lot of people, or maybe even most people, specifically everyone who has seen A Game of Thrones, is Jaime Lannister. Jaime is good because of these two aspects: pre-expectation and growth. Pre-expectation is the fact that we see Jaime in the eyes of basically the most morally good characters of the entire show. The first thing we see from Jaime is banging his Alabama gosh darn sister and push off this innocent little kid from the window. But what makes Jaime's character so satisfying is that we're programmed to kinda hate him right away from episode 1. That's the challenging part. As the series goes on, we get tiny little pieces of thinking that, okay, why am I trying to like this guy? I should not be liking this guy, because we keep going back to episode 1 where he did those horrible things. Until we get that grand reveal, especially in that hot tub scene, of some of the things he's actually been through.
If your precious Randy commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women and children burned alive, would you have done it?
Jaime would absolutely be my #1 example for this type of side character, and I would go in depth to him. But there are already so many videos about Jaime, and if it weren't for the pile of dog shit that was season 8, I would be talking about Jaime's character in this segment.
You are my queen. I don't know what else I can say.
Instead, I'll lean more towards someone with a lot less screen time, and I mean a lot less, but still managed to make such an impact to the whole story, where most people who watch the anime would probably put him in their top 10 characters. And that's the hero killer Stain. What makes Stain great is the fact that it's kind of a contrast to Jaime's instance. Stain comes into the story as this very cool looking villain, but it's kind of interesting to the point where we don't really hate him right away. but instead we're just really intrigued by him, because his philosophies, his goals, his ideals really all make sense. His methods might not be the way to go, but he's right when it comes to his resolve about the heroes around him. And what's great about the fact is, as the viewer, we know how Deku is as a person, and we are ultimately rewarded when someone like Stain, who is immersed into this resolve of his, can recognize as well how good of a hero Deku truly is. Stain does this and leaves this impact in just one episode appearance, and it's characters like these that leave so much impact to the entire story of the whole show, who really changed the way some of the other characters in the show think. It wasn't the fact that they did some evil things, but because they had some right to their actions. And we don't root or like these characters because they're morally good, but they are people who we can relate to or we can understand, therefore we care for them so much more than just the basic pure evil bad guy or the angel goody two-shoes type of guy. I think that's why I love Attack on Titan so much, because there isn't really a clear villain. Everyone is kind of morally gray. These are characters who feel the most realistic, and therefore are much more easy to root for when it comes to following their resolve and their views on the world. Well, this leads us to the end of the video. Well-written side characters are as important as the main character. Without some of these side characters, you wouldn't get the growth of the main character. You wouldn't have the main character be able to learn a lesson. The main character would not go through the pain and torture he needed to go through to grow as a person if it weren't for some of these side characters. Some shape the main character, move our protagonist's story forward, and crucial for our main boy's character and arc that he has to go through. Some characters make the show just better with their presence, whether it's the aura they give off, the lessons they give to the viewer, or the way they change the mood of the story whenever they're around. Most of the shows that you watch would not be as half great if it weren't for the side characters. And I think that's why we love side characters so much.